San Diego Global Knowledge University.
Thank you everyone for taking the time and staying here with us in another seminar. Today we are really honored to have with us Marco Cervantes. This session it's different and special in a lot of situations. First of all, we don't have students. We have an amazing guest, so that put us in context, right? That this is a little bit different. We are not inviting an alumni. The conversation is not directed to current students. It's more to us, the current teachers in the institution. But I think it's mainly special because of the guest that we have. Marco Cervantes um, has for what I've seen, an amazing career, and he will confirm and tell us about that. Uh, he's from Tijuana, if I understand correctly. So
Correct.
that's a huge plus with us, Marco. Thank you. He has an engineering degree from on telecommunications from the Tecnológico de Monterrey and a master's degree in telecommunications from the Politécnico de Torino. Uh, a lot of experience in the cybersecurity area, and I think that's kind of the topic for today. He's currently a channel sales director for Southern European and emerging markets at Forescout, a global cybersecurity technology company based in Roma. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for, especially due to the difference in hours. I think for you it's late night, right? Around 9 p.m.
9 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah. So we really appreciate your time. We really appreciate your effort and that extra effort of doing it late, so kind of late night. Um, yeah, the floor is yours. I don't want to take your time. I think we're here to hear you and not me. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Antunza. I'm gonna share my screen, if that's okay. So, can you just confirm if you see my screen?
Loading. Okay, it's there.
So I'm not based in Rome. I'm based in Turin, which is in the northwest. But my wife would be very happy to hear you say I'm based in Rome because she is from Rome. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity. It's really an honor. So I want to talk about technology. I want to talk about cybersecurity, and I kind of want to give my perspective. Dr. Ansunza said my career was amazing or excellent, something like that. I consider myself still to be a student, so it's kind of humbling to be talking to teachers. It's kind of a full circle moment for me. So thank you for that. So technology, the way that I see it, evolves in waves, and each wave changes what we build, how we work, and what we trust. And the current wave has us working around the transition between intelligence and agency. Systems are becoming more autonomous, and the stakes are increasing, obviously. And cybersecurity is ever more important. Cybersecurity is kind of strange because when it works, nobody really notices, but when it fails, everybody suddenly pays attention. So the story of IT, it's not just one where different tools and better tools have been developed. It's a sequence of platform shifts from the Industrial Revolution in the late 1700s to the advent of electricity, and then the microprocessor, which brought about the personal computer, and then the internet, and then the mobile device, which revolutionized the way that we interact with technology, to advances in the distribution of that technology. We have a cloud and software as a service. And now, like I said, we're working through the transition between intelligence and agency and autonomy. So one thing to really take into consideration is that the time between these shifts is getting shorter. In the late 1700s, with the Industrial Revolution, the steam engine took decades to be adopted widely. If you fast forward to today, you look at Netflix, it took them 18 years to get to 100 million users, monthly users. It took Instagram 2.5 years. So it accelerated even more. And ChatGPT was released in 2022, which is like yesterday. And it took them 2 months to reach 100 million users. This is amazing and extraordinary acceleration. And another example is OpenClaw. It's a project that a guy from Austria, a developer from Austria, invented this model where he took publicly available AI models and made them recursively prompt themselves to achieve a goal. That's an agent. So the model actually prompted itself and asked itself the question. When it answered, it asked itself the question, and so on and so forth until it reached a goal. That was an open source project, and it became the fastest growing open source project in history. That started several months ago. That was November of last year. And in April, they already had over 3 million active users. So it's amazing. It's amazing times. And every one of these shifts is creating new opportunities, obviously. It's also creating new dependencies on resources, on skill sets, and it's creating new risks because innovating across these shifts is fast. Speed and doing it fast are valued by markets. People get paid a lot if they provide value really fast, but that is in conflict with creating mechanisms that provide trust and security around those technologies. That creates time. So between that innovation and the security layer, there's a gap. And that is where cybersecurity lives. That's it. So in a world where everything's kind of changing, we have to build inside something that's constantly moving. The question is, how do we navigate that change? Us as professionals, right? As people molding the future of a lot of people, how do we navigate that? All of us, you and I, and the students in the organization. So just to be clear, I don't have the answers. I don't have all the answers, definitely. And I'm not a cybersecurity expert by any stretch of the imagination, even if I have lived the market for the best part of my career. But today I want to share my perspective, the perspective that I've built from being close to these shifts for some years now. So this is me at the beginning. This is way before I had any idea of where I would be today. Definitely didn't think I would be in Italy in my 40s, for sure. That's my dad. And I believe the careers aren't straight lines. For sure, mine isn't. And I've evolved through different sectors, different cultures, several reinventions. Dr. Insunza was talking about my CV. I was born in Tijuana, Mexico. And I got a bachelor's in electronic engineering and telecommunications, then spent some time in the US. I moved to Europe to get my master's in wireless systems and advanced telecommunications. And I learned that while innovation is kind of global, the adoption and the pace of adoption is very local. And it depends on a ton of factors that are very specific to the place you're in and the circumstance you're in. I then moved into software development for a large American multinational company. And I learned about software development processes and how the speed of development is different across cultures, across strata. And I learned about managing across regions, across cultures, and that was extremely enlightening. Then I moved into business management and into cybersecurity. And one thing I took away from that is that economics follow value. The models, the go-to-market models that we build around them come later. And again, there's this gap between building something that is worthwhile and getting it right. And across my career, at least so far, if you look back, it really makes sense, right? you connect the dots in hindsight and it kind of makes sense. But I can assure you going forward, it made absolutely no sense. But my path isn't for everybody. But what I think I can take away from it is that I learned to trust the process. I learned to stay open to possibilities, new places, new people. I learned to lead with value for my peers, for my family, for my employers, for my customers, and always trying to deliver, to leave a place better than I found it, even if it's only in theory. I think has always been a good bet, and so far for me, it's worked out. So back to the shifts, right? This is where we're now between intelligence and agency. This shift, if you compare it to all the other ones, this one feels different. And I believe it's because it's crossing a boundary that we haven't crossed before. And that's the boundary where the technology used to help us identify patterns and extract data. And on the other side of this transition, we have technology that helps us act on that data. And I believe that the action part, the agency part, is extremely important because it changes the stakes. You try to imagine being one of our ancestors, being a caveman guy, walking down a valley and finding an apple tree in the wild, right? You start interpreting that. Data is just seeing the tree, right? There's a tree there. There's an apple tree. Information is noticing that trees like that grow where there's good soil, where there's water, where there's sunlight, and giving it some context. Intelligence is then realizing that this isn't a coincidence and this is repeatable. There's a cause and effect relationship there. Then agency is choosing a spot and deciding to plant seeds and growing your own orchard. Now, agency is the moment when you stop just recognizing the patterns and start deliberately shaping outcomes, doing something to shape outcomes. And that changes the role of technology because in these shifts we've been talking about, we see that the relationship with technology is changing and is going to change even further. You can always have a dashboard that gives you data, and a model can recognize patterns and predict a way. But if you give that to a goal-oriented autonomous system, it's going to plan, it's going to coordinate, it's going to execute, it's going to do something in the real world. And when these systems move closer to action, that gap I was talking about between the speed and the security becomes way more important because that gap represents the risk, right? For all systems, for all organizations. Now, technology, I was talking about the economics following value, right? And technology usually moves first where value is just visible. People adopt technology because it's easy. You're going to start using an app because it just fixes one of your problems. It's easy to use. Water flows downstream, I always tell my teams. It's not going to flow upstream. Don't expect it to do what's going to be harder. Companies scale what is actually working, what is actually selling. Markets reward that speed and the convenience and just the ability to execute. But the other part, the trust, the governance, the security usually takes longer to mature. And there's a tension here, right? That requires some kind of a balance. And when it comes to technology, I think this is often overlooked. We're working on seeing if we can do something and not really focusing on if we should or how we should. And this pattern is new, right? If you look down that little timeline, you'll see that this happened with connectivity, with the internet. It happened with cloud access. It happened with mobile devices. It happens with software. People release software and it just fixes a problem. Look at Napster, right? But it creates other problems that have liabilities. And there's a gap there that I think is extremely important if you're talking about cybersecurity, because that's what gives it a reason to be. I'll give you a point of data. So There's some research that says that by the end of 2025, 78% of organizations we're using AI in at least one business function. But less than 1/3 reported successfully scaling across organization. So they're using it because it works. They're still finding out what it's going to look like when you scale it out responsibly. And that's where cybersecurity lives. That's the gap. Now, I said cybersecurity is invisible. You only notice it when it breaks down. You always notice a pothole. If you're driving to work and you drive over, you break a wheel, you're going to be late. You're going to spend a lot of money. It's going to ruin your day, right? And if somebody steps in to fix that pothole, you're gonna see the roadblock. You're gonna see the traffic. You're gonna have a terrible day. You notice what's not working. Cybersecurity is exactly like that. Cybersecurity, if it's working, it's like a road. You just drive on it. You don't even notice it. You don't think about it. It's not part of your cognition that day. But if it doesn't work, it has big consequences, right? And everything we operate in nowadays is working atop an infrastructure that is powered by IT and is protected by cybersecurity. Like hospitals, all of your medical records, all of our analyses, all of that is connected. CT machines are connected to an internal network to provide imaging and communicate it across departments. If you look at transportation, everything's connected. Payment systems, your credit card. If you've bought coffee this morning, you probably use your phone to pay. There's all your information riding on that little wire or wireless, and it's extremely important. And everybody goes about our day. We all, as a society, decided that we're going to trust that infrastructure to protect our data, to do what's right, and get the job done without breaking anything else. Now, cybersecurity. When you work in cybersecurity, you have every vendor or every provider has this huge list of incidents, and there's famous incidents across the market that are kind of our top hits, right? When it comes to breaches. I'm not sure if the breach on the university is the LMS is gonna come up, but across the years, in 2024, a couple of years ago, there was this huge thing. You might have seen it in the news where there was an outage that took out almost 9 million computers, right? Devices. And it was something like really, really, really easy to miss. So CrowdStrike is an endpoint protection platform, and they basically look after your laptop, let's say. That's an endpoint, right? And the way that they do it is that you have to install this little software. It's called an agent. It used to be an antivirus. And it goes in your laptop, and you just see a little logo on the taskbar. Well, that's the agent. That's running on your laptop. And that means that it's protecting what's happening on your laptop, what's coming in, what's going out, and it's making sure that nothing goes wrong. That agent communicates with the CrowdStrike server, and it gets updated every now and then to make sure that it's up to date. So what happened in 2024 is that somebody released an update that was faulty. Right? It's just a normal error. Problem is that it reached almost 9 million computers, and it just ground the world to a halt. For several hours, there were no flights. There were airlines ticketing, with pen and pencil, just writing tickets out, seating assignments. You would see just the industry just stop because of one single update. Now, that was terrible for CrowdStrike stock in the short term, but it was great for showing how important that kind of a solution is for our everyday life. And there's other examples. 2017, there's NotPetya and WannaCry. You would see these everywhere if you were anywhere near a computer. They just spread like wildfire. There were hundreds of thousands of devices infected, and there was billions on the line. It's a really big deal when it goes wrong. And this one, Colonial Pipeline, the fuel distribution operations in the eastern US were blocked for days because some hacker, wanted some money in exchange for them being freeing their systems. And this one's my favorite. It's from 10 years ago. But if you don't know what a DNS is, it's a domain name server. So basically, it's like the yellow pages of the internet. Whenever you type www.something.com, that actually doesn't mean anything for a computer. So it goes to the DNS, it gets transformed into an IP. So that's numbers. And then the traffic knows where to go. So DNS is like the backbone of the internet. And if you bring that down, you can bring down the internet, basically. And what happened was that some guy wanted to prove that he was a good hacker. And he created a version of this malware called Mirai. And this malware is very basic. So it attaches itself to devices. Let's say, just like in this case, they were like IP cameras, like the video cameras you buy and you put on your garage to look at where your dog is in the backyard. Those IP cameras are connected to the internet. And this little malware would attach itself to that device, and it had only one job: to propagate itself. So it would copy itself. It looked for other devices, and it would copy itself. And it would look for other devices, and it would copy itself. And the way that it would do that is it would look for devices that had a default password. So when you buy those, they come with admin or user or something, which you should change. Well, statistically, 20% of users don't change those passwords. So that little malware, that little bug just spread, right? It spread silently because it didn't have any other jobs. That's what's called a botnet. So if you've ever heard the term botnet, is a distributed group of devices that are infected, that are just waiting for somebody to pull the trigger. And what this guy did, just to show that he was a good hacker, he basically pointed, I think it was 300,000 of them that were infected in 2 to 3 months. And he pointed them at the DNS servers. That's what's called a DDoS attack, distributed denial of service. So you basically just shower a server with traffic, and the server can't handle it all, so it shuts down. And that's what they did with the DNS. And what happened is, for almost a day, just Twitter, Netflix, Reddit, all of the viewable internet was down, just because this one dude didn't have anything better to do. So if it sounds easy, it's because it is. It's not that hard. You can even rent botnets out. And I'm not talking for thousands of dollars. It's $50 an hour. And you can, target your nosy neighbor or something. So it's really, really easy. It's relatively easy. And the curious thing is that cybersecurity needs to be right 100% of the time for these things not to happen. But an attacker needs to be right only once. So it's not a fair fight, right? Cybersecurity needs to be faster, needs to be better, and it needs to be always one step ahead of the game. And it's not about just the systems. Cybersecurity is protecting what we call our digital way of life, which is what we are. If you use a computer or a mobile phone, you're connected to something, you're connected to this vast digital ecosystem. And your data, your work, your communications, your bank account are all in there. Oh, and by the way, that's why I love working in cybersecurity, because I believe that you can just work to protect something that not everybody knows is so vital for their jobs and for their well-being. And it's actually really rewarding. So cybersecurity is often talked about as just this word, this thing, like if it was a tool, right? It's not. It's a stack of layers and categories and philosophies and ways of enforcing trust in all sorts of different places. It's different control points. It's ways of keeping track of what's going on. You can look at identities. You can trust Bob, but not Bill within a network, right? You can trust this application because it's your LMS, or not another application because it's not, right? It's not. It could go rogue. You can trust a piece of a network. You can trust a piece of the underlying infrastructure, or you can trust a piece of data. You can say, this file is trusted, but not that other one. So you can just track where that what that file is and trust its contents. The control points are different, but they have the same goal, right? It's just the underlying trust is what we're trying to go for here that allows us to do what we were talking about before. Also, we can look at this in another way. So it's also about where we can enforce that trust. When you talk about all the different kinds of security, if you look at all the technologies, they're usually in one of these categories. And perimeter security is what's a perimeter? When back in the day, when you had internet in your company, it used to come through this big cable, from your provider. And that's where the internet came from. That's where connectivity came from, in and out. It was one point. And if you put a firewall there, you could control everything that went in and went out, right? But now we all carry access points with us everywhere. So the same company has hundreds, if not more, access points to its network concurrently. That introduces a lot of risk. So the perimeter is a concept that's kind of outdated now because the perimeter is not physical anymore. It's not in one place. Endpoint is what I was talking about before. It's your laptop, it's your server, it's your mobile phone. Network security, do you want to be on the actual cable where the data is passing? That's where you can enforce what's going through it. Identity, you can enforce who gets recognized as somebody who's trustworthy or not. And you can also enforce it on the data directly. If you work with Microsoft, you work with SharePoint, you're trusting the data that's actually on those services. Or you can work across them. And this is where we are right now as a cybersecurity industry, because most vendors right now are working at this cross-layer AI-powered cross-referencing layer where all of the other parts are being contextualized, are being correlated, and responses are being organized around that. They're just, agentic security operations built into technology. It's really, really interesting. It's fascinating, right? And these platforms don't just protect one layer; they do it all together, and the responses are built into the same technology. Now, AI is influencing cybersecurity as well in many ways. So there's a defensive layer. Some vendors are developing ways to treat AI agents, as users. So they have rights and they have communication limitations within a network, for example. That's all new. That's extremely innovative. That's being developed right now. On the other side, Anthropic just announced a couple of weeks back, I think, a project called Mythos. Basically, it's a model that is built specifically for finding vulnerabilities. What's a vulnerability? When you have a device, you have your computer, it's going to have software on it, and software was built, by hands, by humans, and it's not going to be perfect. So it's going to have holes. It's going to have open doors, right, for bad guys to get in or extract your data or something like that. That is a vulnerability. When it's known, it's a known vulnerability. When you get patches from Windows and you get patches from Microsoft for Windows, that is what they're closing. They found a door and they're just shutting it down. And they're trying to shut it down before the bad guys can actually use it. But some of those doors are open and we don't know that they exist. Those are called zero-day vulnerabilities. And what Mythos does, that Anthropic just announced, is they find those vulnerabilities. That model just goes and recursively looks at software and discovers those vulnerabilities. And it's amazing because it's like a hacker in a box, right? And it's also working proactively to find exploits. An exploit is a way to get into that door. And it's doing that. You don't need a hacker in a hoodie in a dark room to do it now. That model does it for you. And that's both exciting and scary, to the point that Anthropic itself is not releasing it to the public. They developed a consortium with cybersecurity companies to work out, ways of using it, let's say for the good side of the force, versus putting it out into the wild where anybody can use it to find vulnerability in your systems. So that's just a couple of examples of how AI is reshaping cybersecurity as well. But again, all of this has the same goal. It's just make trust operational. And every one of these pieces has a software stack. And you know where I'm going with this. Every one of these pieces has a software stack and an implementation layer. You need to know how to build it, and you need to know how to put it into operation. And to do that, there's people. It takes humans to do that. Someone builds the technology. Someone develops a go-to-market, a distribution, a reseller network to take that product to market. By the way, that's what I do. That's my job, this part here. And somebody has to actually be with the customers implementing these technologies under the customer specifications, and somebody within the customer has to be there. They have to have SOC analysts and incident responders within the customer to make sure that that technology is operating correctly. And in all these roles, there's products and engineering teams. There's a channel and a specialist and distribution specialists and go-to-market engineers and pre-sales and post-sales and development teams. There's architects and consultants. There's security operations center analysts. There's so many roles that actually fit into this ecosystem and actually keep it going. All humans, right? At least for now. And that's kind of where I wanted to take this conversation is, as an educational institution, I believe we have the privilege of preparing students for that industry that's changing so much, that's blazing trails, that is change. It's going to change even more in the future. And the question is, how do we equip them, not just for today's tools, which we can put in a power slide or you can just read on a PDF somewhere, but for the realities and the changing world that they're going to face tomorrow. And that's the thing I thought about a lot, and conversations with you guys have come up a lot, right? How do we do that? How exactly do we put the rubber to the road there? And I believe, first of all, we have to realize that careers are not linear, because the industry is not linear. Everything moves in ways that we cannot predict. It's not deterministic. In order to thrive in this context, I believe we have to kind of make a couple of shifts. So first, from learning stuff, which is what historically we've been kind of trained to do, to learning to learn. The first one is static, right? It's learning languages, it's learning platforms, products, tools, learning tasks. The second one is learning to be curious, learning to adapt, learning to question, why is this the way it is? And never stop being a student. Just keep on with that mindset. And the second shift is from focusing on tasks, which are just specific, repeatable, and by the way, automatable, to looking at jobs. The job is not the same thing as a task. The job is contextual. It's open-ended. It's goal-oriented. You have to apply judgment. You have to apply situational awareness. You have to use relationships between the parts in order to make it work. A task is typing lines of code, right? That's automatable, especially now. But a job is creating a ride-sharing app. The job is what we should be focusing on, because that's what's going to drive innovation. It's going to drive progress. The task is going to be replaced sooner or later. So our mind, I believe, should be focusing on the second. I mean, anybody can learn to put a brush and paint a ceiling, but painting the Sistine Chapel, that's a job. The brush is a task. So this is something that's always coming up in the way that that we look at how we grow our teams within the company I work for, and how we push our mindset forward. So if we can outsource part of the doing stuff, one of the questions that I have is, how much of our thinking can we actually outsource? Like, is it all of it? Is it just part of it? And we have to realize that we used to outsource manual and repetitive tasks all across history. We already accepted, using a calculator for arithmetic. We're not going around using the abacus because it's cool. And we're used to doing this. We're just used to doing it a little bit slower. And throughout history, we've always outsourced those kinds of tasks, and we've moved on to more complex and progressively more valuable forms of cognition and forms of thinking. And I think you can outsource some thinking, but not all thinking. You can outsource structured, repeatable, pattern recognition kind of tasks. Making a summary, drafting a text, brainstorming ideas. I used it a lot for this presentation, right? I just bounced them off a ton of models, and it was a lot of fun. But you can't outsource understanding. You can't outsource accountability. You can't outsource what the meaning is and what this exchange between myself and you guys on the other side of the screen means. And that is uniquely human. So this is kind of the paradox that I'm trying to work around right now, right? The tension between this extraordinary leverage that new technologies give us. They help us move faster, they help us reach further and hopefully build a more efficient and inclusive society, which is all incredibly valuable, by the way. But this exposes a new fragility within our way of life. And it makes it easier to just, trust too soon, just expect, let security and responsibility just kind of drift into less important states, and to stop thinking as deeply as we used to. There's a recent study that said that students who use AI tools for homework experience a 55% reduction in brain activity. 55. And I think that that is a big number, and I think that can be expanded. That concept can be expanded to a lot of things, social media and a lot of things of our modern way of life. But we need to be aware of it in order to equip ourselves and equip the people that we work with in the best way to handle this. So we should definitely use these tools, right? This ship has sailed. It's not sitting on the pier and saying no. It's not going to stop it, and we should use it for all the real positive outcomes it's going to bring. I would invite students to give AI their biggest problem, like every day. Start in a mindset of, let's see the limits of this technology and be aware of where it starts breaking down and where it doesn't, so that we build AI literacy. That's not something you read in a book. That's something you have to touch every day. The pace that these models are changing, it changes week by week. So being actively involved in challenging these models is one way to learn about how they work and how they can make our life better and our work better. I would encourage you guys to use AI as a teaching assistant. I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of functions within your jobs that can be automated or made better. Just lesson planning, I've used this with my kids, just trying to explain things in different levels of abstraction is an extremely powerful tool to help kids understand complex topics. And AI does this in 2 seconds flat. Summarizing material. That's its main task since the beginning. And just, I'm sure you guys have to do that a lot, building outlines, just creating curriculums. There's a ton of stuff that I can help with, and freeing you guys up to work on the more judgment-based and relationship-based aspects of teaching. I would encourage students to use AI as exam prep or debate prep, right? Try to win an argument with an AI model. If you can do that, you're my hero, right? But it's excellent training. You should, if you had a really smart friend in one part of the knowledge universe, you should really spend some time with that friend and trying to pick his or her brain and get better at what you do. That's what you have in these models, right? It's not just asking it to create what is it called? They're called brain rot images. It's actually very rewarding to have a deep conversation with the model and find out what its limits are, but also what your limits are in learning new stuff. So there's a lot of good stuff, right? And we should take advantage of it, I believe. But also something just bigger than pure speed or efficiency. I think we should encourage students to practice moving from repeatable tasks to finding meaning, and think about accountability and explore context, and just try to abstract the higher context within what you're doing, right? You can learn to twist a knob, but there's so many layers on top of that you can actually work at, and it's going to be increasingly necessary for them to learn to do that motion and think at higher abstraction levels. And also, I would encourage them to exercise responsibility. Just practice asking why, exploring ethics questions, like really complex questions on ethics, just having brainstorming sessions, looking at why does this look the way that it does, and where can I exercise these opinions and these judgments better within the context of my job or my family or my community. Also exercise. I would encourage everyone to really get some exercise in zooming out and looking at the big picture. Like, what are the implications of this? This is nice for today. Like this is my afternoon, right? But what happens at this week, and what happens this year, and where does this take me 10 years from now? And where does this take my kids and future generations? I believe it's valuable, and I believe this kind of exercise should inform how we actually interact with new technologies like this. Thank you. If there's any questions or comments or anything, I'm happy to stick around.
Hi there. So my name is Devin Parker. I'm the Director of Admissions from the university. And thank you so much. I think that this is an extremely important meeting for us all. I understand that everyone is potentially under attack every day, whether knowing or not knowing. So I do have a question that's kind of like a combination question. So what's the difference between like the cybersecurity and blockchain? And then how can that overlap with DevOps?
So blockchain is it's a technology that allows any operation to be placed on a ledger and to be to have a unique record that maintains verifiability by anybody involved, right? That is just an enabler for all kinds of things. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, I'd be happy to go down that rabbit hole. But I believe that that's gonna like every time I'm going through what the equivalent of the DMV would be here in Italy, I always say, blockchain is going to save us, because the way bureaucracy works, it's just the starting block to something that definitely goes through the blockchain to get fixed. But as far as cybersecurity goes, the verifiability is a different concept. So when you're talking about cybersecurity, you're usually trying to identify users, networks, applications, and try to maintain the integrity of that identification throughout the life cycle of that entity. So it's let's say it's just self-contained systems as far as the cybersecurity technology goes. So it's I think it's different concepts, but if I were to look at it from a lens of education, like that is exactly the question that we should be tackling, right? Because
correct.
I think students right now are gonna step out of into like the quote unquote real world, and things are moving so fast that those aren't even like the cool things to know now. They're kind of the starting of a conversation that they're probably going to have next week on their first job, right? So I would really encourage to deep down in these two topics.
I love that. And do you think that there is any overlap in any of these topics with the DevOps? Because I mean, we're talking about efficiency, we're talking about diving it, right?
Yeah. Well, DevOps is, I think, at a big inflection point right now. And you know, Dr. Cardenas and I have had conversations around this. I believe that the current state of technology is going to make those, back to my tasks point, those tasks obsolete like pretty quickly. So the need to reinvent what DevOps actually means is going to be like the next big thing in that part. So I think the educational community is front and center in this conversation.
Yes.
You look to Silicon Valley, where my colleagues are, and they look left and right, and nobody really knows. Like anybody that tells you with certainty, like any time frames or adoption cycles or diffusion timelines, we're all spitballing here, to be very honest. But I believe that it definitely needs to be part of that conversation.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Thank you again.
Any other questions, anyone?
Go ahead.
Gerardo?
Sorry. Thank you, guys. Marcos, nice to meet you. Thank you so much for this training about this very actual and important topic. Marcos, you mentioned a lot about the speed, and I guess we all have known about the speed with the technology, around the whole technology, not only AI and cybersecurity. But like 2 months ago, I read some article about the legal stuff about the cybersecurity. And in that lecture, it was about specifically more for the both perspectives about the creators for the AI and the users for the AI, right? And that lecture said the US, it's more focused on to create more laws about the creators. In the Europe, it's more focused on to create laws to the users. Okay, I know maybe it's not your strong thing about legal stuff, yeah, but maybe because your situation, because you live in Europe, maybe you have and you are an expert for this topic. Maybe you have this kind of vision about the topic, and is it true, or what do you think about this?
Well, thanks, Gerardo. From the global perspective, if you look at how technologies, how companies are looked at in the US versus in Europe, technologies, I believe, companies are looked at as entities that need to be protected, and they need to be allowed to make money and develop, and the speed is favored versus the responsibility part a bit more. Whereas in Europe, one thing that they're really good as a whole, obviously it's not just one block, but as a whole, Europeans are very good at slapping rules, norms, and regulations on stuff to kind of limit it. And from my USA brain just kind of thinks that's just limiting innovation, right? Because there's so many hoops to jump through, and there's so much red tape. But the protection of the individuals and the services and guarantees given to individuals and families are objectively a lot better if you look at Europe as a whole. So there's a trade-off there, Gerardo, I believe, and it just, I mean, it's no secret that the U.S. and Silicon Valley in particular are the hotbeds and concentration of innovation and for the last 30, 40 years, bar none, right? There's no competition. But again, I think there's a tension there, and I think there's an equilibrium to be struck. I don't think the jury is out yet, because like all things, new technologies require thinking about problems in different ways, and I don't think that they've figured out. To give you an example, where liability falls. Like if an AI model tells me to do something or does something on my behalf, is the AI model responsible? Am I responsible? I mean, as a society, we've worked through this before. Like pets have liabilities, right? And you have limited liabilities with regard to your pet. And we kind of figured that out. But before those laws were there, we're like, what happens if your dog, bites somebody, right? So I think we as a society need to go through that. We're still at it. Nobody has really figured it out. And the way that these things work, I believe, is there's people, there's forward thinkers, and there's people ahead of the curve, and there's late adopters. And usually countries that are more in touch with this kind of innovation have to work it out first, and they don't always get it right. And it's a cycle. I think that if we have to look back, 50 years from now and go like, oh, that was what we're supposed to do. But if you look at it like at a day by day basis and a country by country by basis, it's not going to make sense. You have to like really, really zoom out. It's like looking at pixels, right? You have to really, really zoom out to see a picture. I think the jury's still out, Gerardo, honestly, on that aspect.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Yeah, because we know the people with this malicious intention it move faster rather than the last. Okay, and it's important to know this all of different around the area about the cybersecurity. Thank you very much, Marcus.
No problem. My pleasure.
I have a comment / question, Marco. First of all, thank you for enlightening presentation. It really got me thinking and has produced a lot of great ideas. So I'd like to comment on one part of your presentation that I like very much, and I think it's because of my personal background. I have both a technical but also a social science related educational background, and I always like to think of that nexus between computers and humans, right? And as educators, we're here to not only provide knowledge and skills and training, but we're also to a certain extent obligated to help students either find some sort of path towards a career or find something that brings them professional satisfaction, right? And in that process, prospective students are always asking us, what are the chances of, AI replacing, what I do or what I learn here in coding, in a coding program, or in a future cybersecurity program, et cetera. And so your slides that had to do with, explaining, to the student, that their life as a professional in the future is going to go beyond the tasks to forming some sort of a meaningful vocation that leverages AI and leverages technology to make what's automatable, but it frees you up to be able to form a career that's not one that maybe you might perceive right now, but that, has been predicted to be the case in the future. And so, that conversation is a nuanced conversation that sometimes, our admissions people have to, in some way or another, be good at discussing. And then, further down through the educational process, our faculty. So, uh, my comment and my question to you is, if you could talk a little bit more about how to be able to convince people or to explain to people this very important nexus in a concise manner that's easily digestible.
I hope we have some transcript, guys.
I'm sorry?
It was a joke. I hope we have this on transcript because I'm excited about this.
Not to put you on the spot, Marco.
No, not at all. Not at all. I need to lower expectations. No, so when I was graduating from university, the view that I had of the world is that I was going to work in electronics engineering and telecommunications. Like I was going to be behind a desk and doing blah 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 blah. I had it mapped out so well, and part of the message that I wanted to convey today was that was so wrong. Like if anything, if somebody would have told me like, this is about as wrong as you can get, I wouldn't have believed it. But that I think is the message that I would give to 22-year-old Marco, 23-year-old Marco. And to trust the hunger and trust the process and the curiosity. I read a statistic somewhere many years ago where it's something around 30% of people are working in their major 20 years into their career. And that's not bad. Like that speaks to the complexity of the things that we have to figure out, right? Like you said, you have a background in computers and social sciences, right? I was very much a techie until somebody said, you should really look at this other role. They said, I'll hire you as a, what is it, project engineer? I don't remember what that was, but please go have lunch with this other dude. And that other dude was in purchasing. And I was like, what is that? And that person told me that had the insight of bridging parts in my brain that I wasn't able to bridge. And I think that's so important to understand beforehand. Like you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're going to find out 10 years from now. When I read my role within my current company, like when I was out of college, I had no idea those roles even existed. So that's why I stress the fact that, it makes sense, but only in hindsight. It makes sense when you connect the dots afterwards. It's not going to make sense to you when you're finishing a course. What education will do is it's going to teach you to learn. And that's what I tell my kids. You're not going to use the Pythagorean
theorem,
whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. You're not going to, you're probably, chances are you're not going to use it. If you do, like, wow, you're going to be the exception, but you're probably not going to use it. But what we are learning is how to take that piece of science and learn it and apply it and think about how you apply it elsewhere. And that mechanism, that synapses, that is what you're going to carry forward. I don't work in electronics anymore. I don't use any of that, absolutely any of that. I found a book with my notes recently. I have this little notebook with all my calculations. Like I was doing like signal processing math, that now looks like gibberish, right?
Yeah.
But what I am using is just the ability to stick with it, the ability to be comfortable without knowing everything, the ability to bridge concepts that I, saw this there and I thought about this, that maybe there's a solution in the middle, the ability to, use the inductive process, the deductive process, all of that remains. And that builds the way that your mind works, well into your career. So fact is that the job that I wanted when I went out of college actually disappeared. It disappeared in the last 25 years. It did. And it's okay that it disappeared. I actually worked for a large telecommunications company. That communication company does not exist. It was number one back then.
Wow.
And it does not exist now. So it's okay to like be worried that where you're going is not going to be where you're not going to know where you're going. But that's how this works, and that's how careers work, and that's how science works, and that's how the world works. And just learn what you can, because any piece of learning, whenever you have people as smart as you guys sharing what you know to them, that's a gift in of itself. That's an opportunity, and anything they can absorb is going to equip them better for whatever comes their way in the future. But trying to determine it a priori, I don't think it works.
Thank you, Marco. I think as teachers, as faculty, as people that the students look up to, the best we can do to communicate these realities to them.
Did we lose your audio?
We lost your audio, Miguel.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can.
The best you can do.
So the best we can do to communicate these realities to our students in a frank way that builds trust with them, I think the better. And your words and your perspectives are extremely valuable for us in that perspective. And just to close, I want to mention to everyone involved in this call and in this seminar that Marco Antonio has participated on our advisory board for technology programs now for several years now. And Marco has been in many ways a guiding light for us institutionally, playing his very important role as advisor to the committee, which his recommendations get sent down to faculty and sent down to staff, et cetera, so they're executed. I want to mention to you guys, this is the first time that we all get to meet and talk to Marco. I think it's a wonderful opportunity right now to get to know you, Marco. Maybe a little bit too late in the game, but I'm glad that it happened. And I want all of you guys to know that the institution has leaders like Marco at the forefront, helping us make those decisions that are both relevant and important for our students and for their learning. And having you, Marco, at the forefront is an honor for us as well. So thank you, Marco, for doing that, for committing your time to our institution. I know that every once in a while we check in with you and we give you statistics about our graduates and whatnot. But I'll tell you, every year, every month that goes by, we improve. And the results that we've seen from our satisfaction surveys from students, from their personal and professional situations improving post-graduation, is something that we all feel very proud to be part of. And Marco, I want to transmit that sentiment to you as well, because as a leader in this institution, you had a lot to do with that. And so I hope you share in that satisfaction with us as well. Dad, would you like to say some final comments here?
Yes, certainly. Once again, Marco, thank you so much for a wonderful and enlightening presentation seminar. We have in our faculty present and participating professors of philosophy and ethics like Meli. We have professors of mobile applications like Claudia. We have our technology programs founders, basically Sergio, Samantha, and on the staff side, we have our human resources coordinator, Lydia. We have our admissions director, Devin. We have, I think, participants who I think got triggered in their thinking with at least one or two of your slides and your concepts that you presented. But I think what is mostly fascinating is how you started and how you ended. You started by saying that you consider yourself a student after such a brilliant career that you have, and that as a student, the most important thing is you learn, and you're learning every day, and I think that is fantastic. And at the very end, you said, behind all of this change, all of this technology, we have humans. We have humans there doing things. So those two things together should give us professors, staff that we're here, the hope that that no technology, including AI, no technology will displace us, and that certainly, the road ahead is not a straight line, like Marco explained, and it should give us confidence that what we're doing can evolve, just like technology, the industry is evolving. We in our curriculum should evolve, and as Miguel said, fortunately, we have been able to make adjustments. Marco, internally, we're very proud of the efforts of our faculty and staff. For example, we've already envisioned that after, hopefully, our reaccreditation, we will adapt some of the titles of some of our program titles. For example, the full stack development, AI, immersive, that maybe we're going to say something like how to use AI to code, and we will make adjustments so that our students know that the future is a new future, and that it's not a straight line that you can predict either. But what we can teach is teaching them the basics of what humans do, which is really learning how to learn, being always inquisitive, making sure that we provide the best of us in terms of the human side, the human element. Um, it's truly exciting that this year we are almost 60 years into having witnessed, and I witnessed it, the connection of the first two computers at UCLA in the creation of the internet. 60 years, almost 60 years. And it was not until only recently that educators started using the internet. And they were very afraid because they thought that distance education had no place in education. and, and of course, we've had education via correspondence and via mail for many years. But, I had the courage of starting the first international distance education program using telecommunications, using satellites at that time. This was in basically 1984. And so this is only 1984 to today, is only 50 years ago. And I had a tough time initially trying to convince people that this was the future of education. And now everyone talks about remote work and remote learning. And now, but it takes a lot of time before people adopt what is really needed. And if we can close that gap, and if we can also somehow or other have the confidence of collaborating, which is something that I think in all of your slides, you had that idea behind collaboration. That's how you learn, by collaborating, by hearing, others. I was very glad to see the photograph of your dad, who I really loved in many ways and admired. And he was in many ways a pupil of my dad as an attorney and so on. But we in many ways, I remember when you actually had that meeting with your colleague and that you first talked about non-technology tasks in your job, in your possible job. And when you actually got that job that you mentioned, I remember when your dad shared that with me. He said, Marco is leaving the technology. I said, no, he's expanding. And so what you shared is history that I have in my mind. And it's really fascinating how you got us through your presentation. And of course, when you said that technology comes in waves, that's the issue. The waves, they're shorter, and we have to act. But San Diego Global Knowledge University has the great pride of having in its title the term knowledge, and particularly global knowledge. And so we have a responsibility of presenting technology in the way it should be, and of adapting what we teach to the realities of that technology, those technology waves, and the dynamic nature. And it will continue because humans were very creative. We really are, despite conflicts and so on. The conflicts come through governments, other things. But the reality is that individuals, we all have the same desire to improve our lives and to collaborate. And as we learn more about others and we acquire global knowledge, we become more collaborative. So I think you got us through many thoughts that I encourage you all. And with your permission, we're taping this presentation. Hopefully, we can share the recording with you all so that you can study it again and really reflect on it. And in our strategic plan, again for the university, we do have the commitment to create 2 new programs, as I mentioned, in technology. So this year, the idea was to analyze what the nature and the scope of those 2 new programs would be. And I think you gave us the framework already, Marco. And if you can help us, maybe with committee meetings or whatever in the course of the year, not abusing your time, you can help us shape those topics and eventually the curriculum for 2 new programs. It would be a wonderful. We will become leaders in many ways of an area of study that is not just technical or social science. It's global, and it's the entire human experience. So we really treasure again your presentation, and thank you again for the great effort, and thank you all for participating, all of our team and staff. And Sergio and Samantha, congratulations for this again seminar series of Spotlight. And this was certainly a special Spotlight presentation, as you said, Sergio. Thank you for your introduction also. So thank you, Sergio, once again. Let's give him a final applause.
So now we can move on to the exam.
There's a test.
There we go. There we go. And let's record the results, right?
Rob, so
thank you. If I can just
Yes.
say something. Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Marco.
Thank you all. Thank you for the opportunity. It's really an honor, and it gave me an excuse to kind of put some ideas onto pen and paper. And throughout the process, I was managing all of you guys, and it's really humbling the impact that you have on students' lives. I think teaching is one of the most noble professions in the world, in history. And whenever I have a hard time with one of my kids' teachers, I just find the grace in knowing that that person is pushing something across a chasm that is not going to go there unless they actually spend blood, sweat, and tears to get it there. So thank you. Appreciate you all. I know that there's a lot of value that students bring from interacting with you. A lot is rhyming with you. And for what it's worth, if there's anything I can do with you or for you, please do count on me. I know Dr. Cardenas and Miguel and everybody, know that I'm a man of my word. And if there's anything I can do, please do let me know.
San Diego Global Knowledge University, education beyond boundaries.